Welcome to Business Baron. Today we're exploring some of the most dramatic economic collapses in history. Stories of booming nations brought to their knees by debt, hyperinflation, and political turmoil. From Zimbabwe to Venezuela, Germany to Greece, these cautionary tales show how fragile economic prosperity really is. Stick around to learn what caused these crises and what lessons they hold. Let's start in Zimbabwe. In 1980, Zimbabwe was one of Southern Africa's richest countries, boasting fertile farmland, thriving tobacco exports, and valuable gold and platinum mines. But everything changed in November 1997 on what became known as Black Friday. President Robert Mugabe announced massive payouts to war veterans, causing the Zimbabwean dollar to lose over 70% of its value in just one day. Soon after, the government launched aggressive land seizures, destroying commercial farms and collapsing food production. By 2008, hyperinflation had reached an unbelievable 79.6 billion%, making the Zimbabwean dollar virtually worthless. The $100 trillion note that appeared in 2009 could barely buy a loaf of bread. Next up is Argentina, a country that was once among Latin America's richest. Despite fertile lands and a strong economy, decades of heavy borrowing and money printing led to disaster. By 1989, inflation soared to 3,000% annually, wiping out wages overnight. A currency pegged to the US dollar helped stabilize things briefly in the 90s. But by 2001, Argentina defaulted on $93 billion, the largest sovereign default in history. The crisis sparked riots and political chaos, with 5 presidents falling within 2 weeks. Even decades later, Argentina still grapples with debt and inflation fears. Germany's story takes us back to the aftermath of World War I. Forced to pay a staggering 132 billion gold marks in reparations under the Treaty of Versailles, Germany printed money to cover debts. This triggered hyperinflation so extreme that by 1923 prices doubled every few days. A loaf of bread that cost half a mark in 1918 skyrocketed to 200 billion marks just 5 years later. Workers were paid twice daily just to keep up with soaring prices, and savings evaporated overnight. Stability only returned with the introduction of a new currency, the Rentenmark, later that year. Fast forward to modern Europe with Greece and Portugal, 2 countries deeply affected by the Eurozone crisis. Greece joined the Euro in 2001 feeling prosperous, but in 2009 it was revealed their budget deficit was more than double official estimates, triggering panic among investors. Greece accepted bailouts totaling $240 billion from the EU and IMF, but the social cost was severe. Pensions were cut, unemployment hit 27%, and protests erupted nationwide. Portugal faced similar challenges by 2011 when it requested a $78 billion bailout after rejecting austerity plans. Wages froze, unemployment rose sharply, and thousands of young workers fled the country searching for jobs abroad. Looking back even further in history, Spain's 16th century empire was once the richest on earth thanks to silver flowing from its American colonies. But costly wars and repeated bankruptcies drained its treasure. Inflation soared as prices quadrupled by 1600 compared to a century earlier. Ordinary people bore the brunt with higher taxes and soaring bread prices as Spain's golden age faded. In Venezuela, oil wealth made it South America's richest nation during the 1970s, a Saudi Venezuela. But corruption and falling oil prices in the 80s started a decline. When Hugo Chavez rose to power in 1999, he used oil money for social programs, but also dismantled private enterprise. After crude oil prices collapsed around 2014, Hyperinflation spiraled out of control, reaching an estimated 10 million% by 2019. Shops emptied, salaries became worthless, and more than 7 million Venezuelans fled abroad, one of the largest migrations in recent history. Finally, the Soviet Union, a superpower boasting space race triumphs and massive industrial output, crumbled under economic strain. Despite its might, shortages grew, farms underperformed, and billions were spent on arms. Gorbachev's reforms in the mid-1980s opened debate, but also unleashed crisis. By 1991, after a failed coup and rising independence movements among republics, the USSR dissolved. The ruble collapsed, people lost their savings, and soldiers deserted unpaid. The promise of abundance vanished with the empire. These stories from around the world share common themes: excessive debt, reckless money printing, political mismanagement, and external shocks can devastate even the strongest economies. They remind us that prosperity is fragile, and understanding history is key to avoiding repeating these mistakes. Thanks for watching, Business Baron. If you found this video insightful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into economic history and business lessons from around the globe. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.